Hey guys, I'm back again. If you can see behind me, my island is really messy, and that's because I just got done with my Sunday prep cook video and I haven't cleaned it up yet, but I wanted to get dinner on and moving because this will take about 3.5, 4 hours, and it's about 3:30 right now. So I want to get this done for dinner tonight. I'm trying a new recipe. It's called Osso Buco, and the recipe that I found, I'm going to make a little tweak to it here and there just to fit my allergies. But the reason that I'm inspired to make this today is because we found these beautiful beef shanks on sale, and they look really nice and fatty. They look marbled, and I thought they would make a really good dinner. Wasn't really sure how to do it, so I got on my friend Google, and they showed me that I could make Osso Buco. I've heard of it before. I didn't know exactly what it was. Now I do. It's called braised beef shanks. So I'm gonna go ahead and follow the recipe basically how it is. I've read over it a couple of times. I think I know what I'm doing. If this recipe doesn't turn out good, you will never see this video. So if you're watching it, you'll know that we really liked it. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and show you, oh, there's my breakfast casseroles I made. I'm going to heat up my cast iron skillet. I don't think I've got it seasoned yet. It's still not to that non-stick stage, so just don't pay attention to that. But we're gonna go ahead and get this going and heating up, and it says to use a good fat like lard or ghee or coconut oil. What I've got here in this jar is rendered fat from brisket. The brisket that I had was really super fatty, so I chopped it up and I made it into basically bacon bits. And this is the oil and the grease that was left, and it is really, really good, guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and use that. The only other option that I would do here is I would either use butter or canola oil, because that's what I can have, but you can use olive oil. You could use any oil that works for you. So let me go ahead. I forgot to get tongs. So I've got the tongs now. And I'm just gonna let this warm up and melt for me, and then we're gonna add the beef shanks. Beef shank is new for me. I've never used it before. I saw it and I thought it looked really good, so I thought I'd try it. The total price of the beef shank that we got was about, I believe, $10, but I think that this is gonna make at least 5 servings, which is about $2 a serving, which really isn't that bad at all. Because, you know, with keto, we want to go ahead and do moderate protein, not high protein. So we're gonna start, and I've already prepped these. It said to pat them dry and put salt and pepper on them. So I just went ahead and put salt on them because I can't do the pepper. And we're gonna go ahead and do this now. That was a hair. Okay. I am so glad I got this pan last weekend. This is exciting. Okay. So the recipe says to let these cook like this for about 3 to 5 minutes until a nice crust forms on the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're going to let this go ahead and cook until there's a nice crust on the bottom, and then we're going to flip them over as we were instructed. And I'll tell you, adding the salt to the top of these and letting them sit for a few minutes is exactly what we do with our ribeye when we cook it on the grill. It seems to just impart a little bit extra flavor to it, and so we like doing it that way. I am really getting dehydrated today. I've cooked so much that I'm really, really thirsty. So I just took a good drink of water. When you're prep cooking, make sure that you remember to drink your water. Keep it with you because it's going to be really important. Now the recipe also said to preheat the oven to 325. I've been baking bacon and cheese chips and casseroles in there, so I'd been cooking them at like 425, so I went ahead and turned it down to 325 a little bit ago. Now in the center here, this is actually bone marrow, and I've heard that you can just scoop that out and eat it. I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. I know that that is a very healthy thing. The marrow is one of the best things. But what I'm planning to do is once this is cooked, when we have our leftovers, I'm actually going to remove the bones and I'm going to put them in a little crock pot. I've got one of those little round ones, you know, like a party size. And I'm going to make a little bit of beef bone broth with it. So I think that should be really good. Now let's see, this has been a few minutes. It's starting to get a good golden color on it. Let's check this thing. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and flip these. Look at there. I actually did it right. Okay, now once this is cooked on this side, and I do see like this is pulling up, and I don't know how to get that browned, so we're just not going to worry about it. I wonder if I could do this. Let's see. There we go. Maybe that'll let it lay down a little bit. There we go. I think that's a little better. I think what happened is that tendon or whatever is really tight. So that's why it pulled up like that. Now, it says that once it's done being browned on both sides, what we're going to do is put it in a Dutch oven. And a Dutch oven, if you don't know what that is, it's just a really big saucepan. Your biggest pan that you have. Now this pan is old. This pan is probably 50 years old or longer. My grandma Emerson, this was her pan. And when she died, I got it. And so, yeah, it's looking good. So this is, you know, this is an old family favorite pan that we have, and I use it all the time. I like it because it's got a lid. Okay, now I'm gonna, ooh, that is smoking hot. So I'm gonna turn that way down. And as you can see, I just threw them in here. The next part of this recipe is to cook the vegetables. Now, I'm gonna move this off the heat for a minute. Okay, I need to let that chill out for a minute, and I don't have a vent, so won't do that. But the next part of this recipe is to cook the vegetables. This recipe calls for onion, garlic, and celery. I, of course, am going to do without the onion and garlic because I can't have it. But I do have celery, and I am going to use that. I have some butter here that I'm going to saute it in. Again, you can just add whatever you have and whatever you want to use. If you want to use coconut oil, olive oil, ghee, the beef fat, I could have used that again. I just decided to go with butter to give it a little richer flavor. So it looks like it's calming down now. So I am going to grab that pan and bring it back over here. And I'm going to saute the celery. Okay, and we're just going to let the celery cook until it's, you know, more golden brown and see-through and all that good stuff. Getting up some of those good fats from cooking the meat in here. And we're just going to let it cook for a couple of minutes. So my grandma Emerson and my grandma Brooks were amazing, amazing cooks. They were amazing women. My grandma Brooks was a single mom. Her husband had died at a very young age, and so she was just always my hero. She was so Independent. She smoked, she drank, she you know, had a beer every night. She was 100 pounds soaking wet, and every night she had a beer. And that was her thing. If she had 2 beers, then she was living dangerously, because, you know. But, yeah, so my grandma Brooks was pretty amazing. My grandma Emerson. I learned so much from these 2 women, and a lot of things that I do as far as saving, like saving my jars and stuff like that, are from Grandma Emerson. From Grandma Brooks, I got, you know, dressing up and having fun with jewelry, and, you know, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Of course, I don't have that anymore, but, you know, it's just one of the things. And Grandma Brooks is the one that gave me the recipe for the butter mayonnaise sauce that I make and that I used on my chicken last week. Okay, now that these have been cooking for a little bit, and let's see, now we're going to add broth. And it calls for bone broth, so I pulled out my jar from the freezer and I thawed it out in the microwave, and it calls for 2 cups of broth. So there's 1. And there's 2. You know, that's quite satisfying, I must say. Seeing that do that, that's really satisfying. Okay. And tomatoes. Now this recipe calls for a cup of crushed tomatoes. I'm not going to do crushed tomatoes. I'm actually going to use my spaghetti sauce that I made earlier this week, because it's kind of like crushed tomatoes, and it has that more Italian flair to it, which I'm not going to get the onion and garlic in it, so I figured this spaghetti sauce would be a great use in here. So there's a cup of spaghetti sauce. And this recipe also calls for balsamic vinegar. I can't do balsamic vinegar. The only vinegar that I can have is going to be rice vinegar. And so I use this rice vinegar, and I make sure that it's natural and that it's unflavored. This has no sodium, no sugar. It's original, so this is it. And it calls for a 1/4 cup, so I'll go ahead and use that. Balsamic vinegar is going to have more carbs in it than the rice vinegar because it is a sweet vinegar. So you could instead use the rice vinegar, you could use ACV, but the only vinegar that I can have is rice. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. And then, let's see, dried mustard, which if you don't know what dried mustard is, this is what it is. And it calls for actually 2 tablespoons of dried mustard. One, and, whoa, haha, way too much, hold on. There we go, 2 tablespoons of dried mustard. And fresh herbs. I don't have fresh. It calls for fresh thyme and fresh sage. I don't have either, but I do have dried. So I'll go ahead and do that. Here's the sage. Again, this is the sage I get from my mom. Doesn't she have pretty handwriting? And it calls for 6 to 8 fresh leaves. So I'm going to take, and I'm just going to rub this together make it nice and fine. And we're going to do that. And then it calls for thyme. And I don't know where I ended up with ground thyme, but I do have some ground thyme. So I'm actually going to use this. And each one of these dots is like, I think, a 1/4 teaspoon or something like that. So that might be 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of thyme. And it also calls for 1/4 teaspoon of Himalayan salt. I've got my Himalayan salt. Okay, and let's see. It calls for pepper, which I'm not going to use. 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, which my cinnamon is right here. I thought I had gotten a teaspoon. Let me see. Here's my teaspoon. And I'm going to do a teaspoon of cinnamon. Okay, might be a little light, but there we go. Okay, so there's a teaspoon of cinnamon, and then it calls for a 1/4 teaspoon of ground clove. I don't have cloves. I didn't think about it. I didn't look. So I'm actually going to just use a little bit of ground allspice. Allspice does have clove in it, so that's why it's an acceptable substitution, hopefully. And as far as that goes, everything is okay. We're good. So that's all the spices that we're going to add to this. And the next step is to bring to a boil, and then we're going to lower the heat, and we're going to simmer it uncovered for about 5 minutes. So it looks like it's starting to boil a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and just let it go for about 5 minutes. All right, and while we're waiting, you know, I guess I'll just talk to you. Yeah, my kitchen is a mess from all my prep cooking today. It's just kind of crazy over there too, but you know, it is what it is. It's Sunday. We try to do as much prep cooking as we can on the weekends because it really helps our week go a lot smoother. And really, if I'm going to spend 3 or 4 hours in the kitchen on Sunday heating it up and then trying to cool it down, especially in the summertime, I'd rather do it just once than do it multiple times in the week. So there is that. So I don't know what else to talk to you guys about. We've had a good week. It was our first performance. It was our first football game this week. It was our first performance, and the kids, they're doing great. My daughter's in marching band, so Sunday prepping is really important to us during marching season because it's tiring. I mean, you have Thursday and Tuesday you have practice, and then Monday, Wednesday you have nothing to do, which is a blessing. Unless you go to church on Wednesday, then you have to go to church. And then you also have Friday night football games, Saturday all-day competitions. Our first competition performance is going to be in 2 weeks when we do an exhibition with the whole county, which is going to be fun. And then a couple weeks after that, we do what we call our SCMI, which is our marching contest that we put on, and that's crazy. And I bet you guys can't guess what I'm in charge of or what I help with, which is the food. We have to feed 20 bands their directors and their assistant directors and their staff, which usually turns up into about 300 or 400 people that we feed over the course of about 12 hours. And so so that's a very, very long day. And then what we're going to do this year is we're going to go the next day to see my daughter, who's at ETSU. She is a marching buck, and it's also Parents Weekend, and it's her birthday. So SCMI weekend is really crazy busy for us. I don't think I'll be putting a video of prepping together because we will be traveling that Sunday. I may prep throughout the week to prepare, but that week afterward is probably going to be kind of crazy because it's 4.5 hours from where I am to where she is. So it's going to be a long day and we're going to be exhausted, and there's just no way. I probably won't even do grocery shopping, to be honest, or I might just put together an order and go pick it up at Walmart. So this has been cooking for about 5 minutes. I just wanted to show you how it's looking. And it's just, I'll tell you what, it smells really, really good. I have to say that this is a really good smell. My mouth is actually watering right now. Okay, so the recipe says to go ahead and pour this over the braised meat. So I am going to get another one of these, and we're just gonna pour it over. Whew. Alrighty. I'm gonna kind of wiggle these around a little bit because one of them didn't look like it got very well saturated. And that's it. Then what you do is you take this and you put it in the oven for 3.5 hours, 3.5 to 4 hours, until they're well done. The reason I chose this Dutch oven instead of my other one is because this one has a lid. And that's really going to help to make it tender, almost like a crock pot kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in the oven, and when it's all done, I will bring it out and I will show you what it turned out like. Okay guys, it has been about 3 hours, and to say that my house smells amazing is an understatement. I am so excited to see if this is done. It said we should cook for 3.5 hours. I have not opened this up yet, so let's see how it looks. Oh my goodness. Can you see how wonderfully yummy that looks? Oh my goodness. Let's see if it is tender or not. Let's see. We'll go right here. Oh, look at that. Oh my goodness. Y'all, this is so good looking. I'm going to take a smaller bite and see exactly how this tastes. Oh, let's see. Wow. Wow. That has a lot of great flavor in it. All right. It's tender. It cooked about 3 hours and we are done. I'm going to go ahead and plate this up and give it to my husband and my daughter and see if they like it too. I hope you liked this recipe, and you know, let me know if you tried this recipe and if you like Osso Buco as well. Thank you.